If you want ChatGPT and the other AIs to recommend your book, they must first know that it exists and know enough about it to know who to recommend it to. I released an episode a while back on how to optimize your book's marketing for AI. But this begs an important question. How do you tell if AI optimization is working? What does ChatGPT actually know about your book? Getting the answer to this question is harder than you might think. If you ask Grok or ChatGPT about your book, if they don't know the answer, they'll cheat. Or more specifically, they'll do a quick web search to get the answer that way. This is a bit like an open book test in school. It doesn't test knowledge, it only tells you what the LLM can look up. So you may be wondering, isn't searching for my book enough? No, it's not. If a reader is looking for your kind of book, but doesn't know to prompt ChatGPT for your book specifically by the book's title, ChatGPT won't know what to search for. If knowledge about your book is not in the training data, ChatGPT will recommend some other book to that reader. If you want AIs to recommend your book to strangers, they must first be familiar with your book deep down in their training data, not just a web search. Now, to be clear, this doesn't mean that they have to have read your book. While that helps, you'd be surprised how much a large language model can learn from your metadata, sales pages, and Goodreads reviews. And yes, large language models may have already read your book, which a couple of US courts recently ruled does not violate American copyright law. According to these judges, the fair use doctrine has washed away AI's original sin. You may not agree with it, but that's what the judges ruled. 2 different judges, 2 different courts. There's a lot going on with AI and the law, which we cover every week in my other podcast, Author Update. But just because LLMs can legally read your book, it doesn't mean that they've actually read your book or know anything about it. And this is particularly true since one of the judges indicated that the AI companies may have to actually purchase your book to use it for training. So how do you find out what the AI knows about your book and where it learned it? We'll find out in this episode of Novel Marketing, the longest running book marketing podcast in the world. And one option is to use the following prompt, and I'll put this on the screen so you can see it. Without doing a search, tell me what you know about book title by author name. So this would be something like, without doing a search, tell me what you know about Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. This prompt works some of the time. The problem is, even if you ask the AI not to do a search, even if you toggle off searching in the chat box, sometimes it will still do a search. For example, when I tested this prompt on the free version of Grok, it searched the web and loaded 25 web pages before providing me with an answer. The best way to test the AI's knowledge is to use an API to take away the LLM's web searching abilities. And if that sounded technical, don't worry. I built a tool that does this for you. I designed it to get large language models to confess to what they know about you and your book and how they learned it. This prevents LLMs from searching the web, and so that they can only provide answers based off the knowledge that they already have. So think of this as a closed book examination of the LLM's context. Let me show you how they work. The first step is to go to www.patrontoolbox.com. I have dozens of tools here that help authors with marketing, and they do cost me money every time they're run, which is why they're for patrons only. If you're not a patron, you can become a patron by clicking here where it says Become Patron. And if you are already a patron, just scroll down to the section that talks about AI knowledge checkers. And I will say I've added over a dozen brand new tools since the last time I talked about the Patron Toolbox. And this one here, the book page scanner, is particularly helpful if you're trying to optimize for AI, because your website is one of your best weapons for informing large language models about your book. And this will scan the book page for your specific book and see if it's AI friendly and reader friendly and even search friendly. All right, so right now, the knowledge checkers are at the very bottom. And I have 6 of them that check the big 6. Now, in my experience, this is more or less the rankings. So ChatGPT and Grok are the most likely to know about your book, followed by Gemini, which is also pretty likely to know about your book. And then Claude, DeepSeek, and Llama are the least likely to know about your book. So you'll know if you've done a good job with your AI optimization if all 6 tools are familiar with your book. So let's try ChatGPT. And we're going to try Jonathan Sugar in his book, Shades of Black and Darkness Cast. So the first thing it will do is it will generate an overview of the author. So it'll tell you what it knows about Jonathan Sugar. And then it will talk about what it knows about the book. And one of the things that can tell you right away how much it knows is if it can tell you the ISBN number. Because if it's not familiar with the ISBN number, that's a good giveaway that it doesn't actually know about your book. Because sometimes the AI will hallucinate and it will just make up answers to these questions. So read through the plot overview and make sure that it's not hallucinating here. And I will say it's hallucinating. This is pretty patchy. So OpenAI's knowledge of this book is kind of hit and miss. But you can see that OpenAI has trained on Amazon and Goodreads. And so it has a summary of Amazon and Goodreads. And then I also coded it so that it will say where its gaps of knowledge are. So it'll just list those gaps of knowledge. And then here at the end, it will say further reading and sources. This is going to tell you what websites on the web that the AI used to train itself for this answer in the past. So there's a knowledge cutoff. So AIs are trained, then actual knowledge that's in the model. It varies from AI to AI and they are constantly being updated. But this will give you a good sense of what pages to optimize. So if Jonathan wanted to optimize for OpenAI, his Amazon author page, his Goodreads profile, and his official book page on his website, just like I've been talking about, really are what the AIs are looking at. Now let's try Gemini. I found that Gemini is the most or second most knowledgeable about books. It does really well along with Grok and GPT. So let's see what Gemini knows about this book by Jonathan Sugar. So each one of these is going to be in the same format. So it's going to open up with information about the author. And you can run this on yourself. You can also run it on other authors. And then it will have a summary of the book itself. You can check all of this information and see if it is accurate. And this is hallucinating a little bit less, but it's still hallucinating quite a bit about the book. So this particular book is only kind of so-so in the context. I found this actually to be a really good book to test with because it's only somewhat familiar to the AI. So you may find the AI just completely says, I'm not familiar with that book. Or it may give you a point-for-point breakdown of the book or somewhere in between. Different AIs will perform differently based off of their training data. I'll also say how long your book has been out will affect this. So if your book is brand new, don't expect the AIs to be familiar with your book right away, particularly without doing a search. So this is very interesting. So Grok is telling us pretty explicitly it has not read the book. So it says, while specific character names and detailed descriptions are not universally provided in public summaries to avoid spoilers. And so it's saying it hasn't read the book, but it has read the reviews about the book. And so it can only know what people have talked about. And so it's not confident in listing the characters because a lot of reviews won't name characters specifically. But if we scroll down here, it will say sources of information, the author page, the Goodreads profile. Every one of these AIs look at Goodreads. Grok will look at X more than the other platforms. And it's saying that it's looking at Reddit or fantasy. I don't think there's much information about this book there, but there might be. So anyway, this is a quick summary of what Grok knows. We'll do one more and we will test Claude by Anthropic. So here it says, I apologize. I have very limited information about Jonathan Sugar and his book, Shades of Black and Darkness Cast. So here's what I can provide. And then it's basically saying, I don't have good information. I don't have good information. I don't have good information. So it's listing basically all of the places where it's looking in its memory for information and it's failing. So Claude doesn't know about Jonathan Sugar at all. Let's compare this to Larry Correia, author of Monster Hunter International. Now, this is a slightly older book, and it's also a more popular book. It sold millions of copies, and we'll see that Anthropic's Claude is much more familiar with Larry Correia. So it's giving a detailed background of his life. It's listing his major series. So it's listing the Monster Hunter International series as well as his other series. It's mentioning the awards that he's won. And then if we get down to the plot summary, this is not hallucinating the main characters. This is very accurately listing the various characters. So you can be fairly confident that either Anthropic has read this book and has loaded it into its knowledge banks, or it's read enough reviews and analysis of this book to train off of the open web. My guess is that it has read Monster Hunter International, but you'll notice critical reception. It's looking at what the critics are saying. It also trains on a lot of like news articles. And so the more that there's news about your book, or if you're in Wikipedia, so if there's a Wikipedia summary of your book, that's really, really good for training AI. Most authors aren't notable enough to make it into Wikipedia though. So that's not like everyone can do this, but having a good website can also help. So it continues giving more information. So you may find that these AIs are just completely unaware of you in your book. And if that's the case, I really encourage you to read my article or watch my video on Does ChatGPT Recommend Your Book? It's on AI optimization for authors. So these two episodes kind of go hand in hand. This is telling you what to do. And then this episode is about measuring to see if what you're doing is successful. Do give yourself some time. AIs don't update every day. So sometimes it can take months for the improvements that you've made on your website to translate into improved performance on ChatGPT. And again, this tool is available to all patrons at the Patron Toolbox level and above. Speaking of patrons, special shout out to our featured patron, Danny O'Malley, who's the author of Lemmy and Lizzie Search for the Tastiest Fruits. Two hungry jungle friends set out to find the legendary tastiest fruit. They embark on a juicy adventure. This beautifully illustrated children's book serves up important lessons about courage, trying new experiences, and finding joy in unexpected places. And Danny O'Malley, thank you so much for being a patron of the Novel Marketing Podcast. Thank you for your support that helps keep this podcast on the air. My goal is to create new Patron Toolbox tools every week. I have more than one tool per week so far this year. And my goal is to continue putting tools in your hand to help you be successful. And I do appreciate your support that helps keep this podcast on the air. If you want to find the blog version of this episode, go to authormedia.com/467. If you want to check out the Patron Toolbox, you can find it at patrontoolbox.com. I'm Thomas Umstattd Jr. saying thank you for listening and live long and prosper.